Okay. Do y'all have water? Do y'all have nice little snackies? Maybe some popcorn? A blanket? Your comfies on? Hmm? Hmm? Are you guys ready? Turn down the lights. Are you feeling comfy? Okay. I have two stories. We are on creepypasta.com. In Another Life, in Another Time. Written by Gabrielle Carr. The smell of death was heavy in the air. As he entered the room, he realized that nothing could have prepared him for what he was about to witness. The hall in which he now stood had been decorated for a birthday party. As to whose exactly, that remained unclear. Just ahead of him was a small gathering of people, a mix of forensics and standard officers. Stepping further into the room, one of the officers broke away from the group towards him. The officer extended his hand, which he shook. They both then faced the room with him saying, "So what are we looking at?" "It appears to be a mass suicide, sir." He waved his hand, gesturing to the scene. "Do we have an idea as to who these people are or why they did it? Also, don't call me sir, it makes me sound old." The officer smiled. "Sorry, detective, and not at the moment. We're working on it." A moment of silence enveloped them as they watched the others, each looking for any clue that could help them understand the puzzle before them. He moved to step away when the officer caught his arm. "Just a bit of warning. This is bad. Really bad. There are kids involved." The detective mournfully sighed. "Right," was all he could say. The officer released his arm and he moved further into the party room. There were tables around the room, each with a differing number of people sat at them. Food and drink in various stages of consumption sat before them. It was clear that they had been here for a little while. The smell in the air and from the state of the food, it was clear that decomposition had set in. As he passed one of the tables, he turned, spying 4 bodies together, 2 adults and 2 children. Despite the officer's warning, it did little to help ease his heartbreak. What could compel people to do something like this? Adults doing such a thing he could partially understand. Situations and beliefs and all factored into something like this. But children? They had no choice in the matter, none whatsoever. He could feel the fire in his chest. Pushing these thoughts aside as he tried to remain focused, keep his eyes on what mattered. A call echoed across the hall. "Detective!" He turned to see the officer who had greeted him upon his arrival, and by his side, a woman. Making his way over, he looked at the woman. He had not seen her before, but based on the white bodysuit she wore, she appeared to be a member of the forensics team. "What have you got?" The woman pulled back her hood and lowered her face mask. "Detective," she greeted. He nodded in acknowledgement. "We are certain that the cause of death is poison. Which one is another matter. We have examined a number of bodies and have found no external wounds that would cause death. Each of the corpses have burst blood vessels and in the whites of their eyes, and in other areas around their body, indicating a hemorrhage agent. Why would they choose to do that? Surely there are much easier ways to go." She nodded in agreement. "You're right on that one. As to why, well, only they can answer that for you with certainty. If I had to guess, I would say that it is either one of 2 things. Either this was all they could get in the quantity required, and for some religious belief or another, they believed they had to die like this." Nodding thoughtfully, the detective turned to look at the officer. "Is there anything else?" The officer nodded. "Yes, up on the balcony above the entrance, we found a camcorder. It appears to have been placed there to record this event." As he said this, they turned, taking in the scene. Nodding, the detective replied, "Okay, let's have a look at this camera and see if we can get some idea as to what happened leading up to this." The officer took the lead with the detective following closely behind. At the end of the hall, beside the stage, was a door. In the dim light, it was easily obscured. They made their way through and into the corridor leading to the back of the building. Towards the end of the corridor, the officer turned right and opened another door. It was a small office with a couple of screens. "This is a security office. Unfortunately, the cameras haven't worked for some time, but one of the other offices managed to get the VHS machine working. All you need to do is press play and it should have showed you what happened." He thanked the officer with a nod. The officer nodded back and then closed the door. Sitting in the old, dusty office chair, the detective leaned forward and pressed play, the tape whirring to life. The beginning of the tape was scrambled with static. The sound of people talking can be heard. As the image clears, it shows that the camera is being carried by someone and is watching the main entrance as people enter the hall. Dressed in their finest attire, most of them greet and smile at the camera, some also waving. They seem happy. Did they know what was going to happen? The tape then cuts to people sat at the tables, talking. People mingling and stood throughout the hall, music playing in the background. If he didn't know any better, he would have said that this was a standard family birthday party. The camera pans around, settling on a man. He appears to be in his late 40s to early 50s, brown hair speckled with hints of gray. He stood laughing and joking with a man and a woman. He spots the camera focused on him, smiles, and waves. The person behind the camera waves back, the film wobbling as they do so. The camera then begins to pan around the room again. Static replaces the image, and most of the audio is simply crackling and popping. Leaning forward once more, the detective paused the video for a moment. What was that? There was someone talking, but it was difficult to make out. He rewound the tape and let it play again, this time leaning closer to the screen with the volume significantly raised in the hope of making out what was said. "Stay with me," the voice raspy but clear. Jumping in shock, he placed a hand to his chest, his heart thumping. Again, after taking a moment to calm himself, he replayed the words in his head. "Stay with me." Rewinding the tape once more to see if he could make out anything through the static, he lowered the volume and leaned back once again. The camera panned around the room and then the image faded, followed by this familiar static. Pausing the video, he stared at the screen, scanning to see if anything can be made out through the wall of static. As he continued staring, the static seemed to retreat, and in its place was a picture. It looked to be an angel, but not of an angelic kind. A grim portrayal. It was faceless, tall and skinny, its skin dark, almost black. It had 4 arms, the lower 2 stretched out wide as if welcoming for a hug. The upper 2 were raised upwards above its head, as if revering something only it could see. Large wings unfurled from its back, but these were not adorned by soft white feathers. They were thick and leathery. At first he paid it no mind, thinking it was the quality of the video and the static. But frame by frame, its head lowered, followed by its arms until it was facing towards the camera directly at him. Eyes wide and speechless, the detective could do nothing but stare. The creature began moving forward, slowly at first, as an animal would when stalking its prey. Then it reared backwards, once more standing upright, and screamed, the shriek high in pitch and tortured. The sound was unnatural, cruel in nature. Then it was gone. The thing had vanished, and he was once more staring at static. As much as he never wanted to see that thing again, he found himself rewinding the tape. Reaching the man, smiling and waving, he pressed play. Then, this was followed by the camera panning and then static. He watched, waiting for the thing to show itself. The static cleared and the tape continued, with no sign of the thing or its aura of hatred. What the hell had that been? Was he imagining things? Was his place and what lie in the other room getting to him? He was a seasoned detective. Some of the things he had seen were on similar levels to this. Maybe after all these years, his mind was fraying, collapsing after all the mental strain of all the things he'd seen, even some of the things he'd done. Rewinding, he got to the man smiling and waving, but as the camera began to pan away once more, he hit pause. Not sure how he missed this the first time or those after, he saw a woman, sat off to the side at one of the tables. She wore a pale blue dress and a vacant look on her face. Sitting all alone, she stared forward at what the detective assumed to be the table or something on it, not knowing why he found himself staring at her. A pair of hands came into shot, resting on her shoulders. The fingers long and spindly, they were dark in color. The hands attached to elongated arms. As his breathing began to quicken, he was confident he knew what they belonged to. She turned her face towards the camera, slowly, almost in an effort to not provoke a response from the thing. Her expression now one of terror. His eyes meeting hers. He didn't know how long he stared at her, how long they stared at each other. Unconsciously, moving closer and closer, his forehead a hair's width from the screen, eyes focused, continuing to stare at the woman with her staring back. He became aware of a soft breathing behind him. Something was stood in the room with him, but he couldn't look, held in place by forces unknown. The breathing had moved to his left ear by whatever was now leaning over him. Following the soft breathing, then came a whisper, "Help me." The voice undeniably female, now seemingly released from whatever had taken hold, he jumped forward, hitting his forehead on the screen, followed with him spinning around in an effort to come face to face with whatever was in the room. As he turned, his foot twisted and he lost balance. Falling, he hit his ribs on the side of the desk, landing awkwardly onto the floor. Groaning in pain and rubbing his side, he now had a clear view of the room. He was alone. The room was small and there was no way whatever it was had managed to leave before he could catch sight of them. He needed some fresh air, a break from whatever the hell was happening in here. Pulling himself upright, he stood shakily, rubbing his ribs before making his way through the door and into the small, dimly lit corridor. As he neared the end of the corridor, reaching the door to the main hall, he paused. The sound of laughter and chattering could be heard. Not entirely sure of what he was hearing, he stood uncertainly, his hand resting on the handle. Deciding to take a peek, he gently pushed the handle, opening the door and peeking through the crack. Eyes widening in surprise, he looked out into the hall. People in smart clothes stood talking and laughing. Others sat at the tables eating and drinking, a song he couldn't identify playing through the speakers. Knowing what he was looking at but not wanting to admit it to himself, he pulled the door closed. Thoughts flooded his mind, trying to provide some logical reasoning that could explain what he had just seen. None of which was successful. They all came back to the same illogical conclusion. It was the birthday party. The birthday party. But how is that possible, he thought to himself. For a start, they're all dead. The sounds of laughter and partying a clear defiance to his internal statements. Deciding that he couldn't remain stood here forever, he needed a plan. The best one he could think of would be to keep his head down and make his way through the crowd as quickly and quietly as he could, doing his best to remain unnoticed. All he needed to do was reach the door and he would be out of there. As he began to open the door, the music stopped. The detective paused, door slightly ajar. Something was happening, but what? The sound of someone tapping a microphone echoed through the room. 1 2 1 2. Hello. Can everybody hear me? The sound of people cheering and whooping was the response. It's great to see that everyone could make it here for little Amelia's birthday. Happy birthday, Amelia! Can everybody give Amelia a cheer? Cheering echoed again through the room. Okay. Now that we've done that, it's now time to welcome our new guest. Still with his hand resting on the handle, the detective stood, head cocking and listening. Who was this new guest? Was he referring to an actual person or, and he hoped with everything he had that this wasn't the case, was he referring to that thing? The speaking continued. Now without further ado, please welcome the detective. Startled, his heart pumping heavily in his chest. Me? Come on now, detective, don't be shy. Don't keep us all in suspense. Pushing the door cautiously open, it gently swung aside to reveal the room. Everyone stood staring at him, smiles and grins painted on their faces. He took a couple of steps further when the room erupted into a round of applause, with cheering and whooping filling the air once more. Turning his head towards the stage, he locked eyes with the speaker. It was the man from the video who smiled and waved at the camera, his specks of gray glimmering in the light. Apparently, this was the person in charge, the leader. With a beckoning wave, the man called to him. Please come up, detective. We want to hear some words from the man himself. Unsure of what else to do, he made his way up to the small set of stairs and stood by the man. The lights above, providing an irritatingly bright glare, made him shield his eyes to look out at the crowd of people. The man beside him stood with his arms extended wide, as if waiting for a hug. The detective turned and gave the man an incredulous look. With a sigh, the man lowered his arms and placed a hand on his shoulder and squeezed the grip tight. This has been a long time coming, detective. You've searched for us for so long, and now, well, we finally meet face to face. What do you have to say? Where am I? What is this? Laughter, quieter now, rippled through the audience. The man with the microphone stepped forward. Don't laugh, folks. The detective here is my guest of honor. Our guest of honor. Turning to look at the detective, the man continued. I must say that after all this time that I'm hurt, he said, placing a hand mockingly over his heart. I'm hurt you don't know who we are, detective. I mean, you've been following our escapades pretty closely. Now, let's start with an introduction, shall we? Not giving him any chance to respond, the man continued. My name is Ira Bradbury, and this here, his arm outstretched to the audience, is my family. The detective stumbled backward, wrenching himself free from Bradbury's steely grip. Is that to mean something to me? Because it doesn't. With a mocking smile, Ira replied, Not by itself, no, but I assumed you were a smart man, detective. I thought you may have been able to put the pieces together. Apparently I was mistaken. Let me help you. Maria Peters, Dante Schuler, and Lorelei Stubbs. Does that ring any bells? They did. He knew those names well. They were all victims in cold murder cases. All the victims had died exactly the same way as the people who now stood before him, wondering how he had not made the connection sooner. Eyes widening in realization. It was you. You killed those people. With a slow clap, Ira raised the microphone, speaking not just to the detective, but to the crowd. Yes, we did, and we killed a lot more. Bradbury was about to continue when he was interrupted. But why? Why did you kill them? Why did you kill yourselves? We had no idea about any of you. Ira looked at him for a moment, his steely gaze sending shivers up his spine. To prove ourselves, our commitment. Look around at where you find yourself. We are the chosen, able to live forever, a moment in time, embracing each other for all eternity. This is his gift, our reward. Noticing that Bradbury had mentioned a he, was this other person the true ringleader? If not Bradbury, then who? Who are you talking about? He spat. The mocking smile had never left his face. I'm sure a benevolent benefactor has made themselves known to you, he said, raising his arm upward in reverence. He then dropped them once more and continued speaking. They must have, otherwise you wouldn't be here. Like us, you have been chosen. Your commitment to finding us despite when all hope was lost. The lead's dead and everyone else had given up. But you didn't. You still tried, he said, pointing at him. You did everything you could possibly think of. We've been watching you, keeping a close eye on your activities and movements, and I must say, on behalf of everyone here, we are impressed. In another life, in another time, you could have been part of our family from the beginning. With a glint in his eye, he finished with, better late than never. That was In Another Life and Another Time by Gabriel Carr on Creepypasta. The Forest Clearing, written by Sidewinder. As a trigger warning, there is talks about suicide, self-harm, depression, and stalking. But yeah, The Forest Clearing. I started playing VR chat about 2 months ago. I picked it up out of desperation. I had lost a good friend a few weeks prior and needed to be around people, but I had no one in my life at the time. He had been my only friend, and for years at that. I'd always been too socially awkward to talk to and get to know people. If you've played VR chat before, it went how you did expect. I would join public worlds and group instances, be too shy to make conversation, and end up leaving after an hour of feeling left out. Most people would try once and stop, but I was desperate. I tried again the next day, then the next, and the next. After 4 consecutive days of playing with no luck, I decided to put on a neutral-looking avatar. Walk up to a group and just stand there until they talk to me. Fortunately for me, it worked. They took some kind of pity on me and taught me how to fit in, how to play, how to find avatars, and to be more comfortable around people. For the first time in years, I felt maybe, just maybe, I could make friends. I eventually did make friends. They're good people. We would world hop, hang out, and drink together. I became addicted to VR chat. It's not that big of a deal. I was happy and everything was fine until about a week ago. You see, 1 week ago, I made a big mistake, though unknowingly. I felt a little down and decided to go world hopping to look for a world that fit my mood. One that would let me get in touch with my emotions. I used the keyword dark for my search, thinking I might stumble upon something serene yet moody. That's when I discovered Dark Forest Clearing. As far as I know, it no longer exists. I will still find poorly made copies of it occasionally, but not the original. I don't remember the author's name. I didn't think to check it. I never do. The thumbnail of the world was monotone and depicted a dense network of tall pine trees, all of them scalped in black. A thick light gray fog surrounded the base of each tree, letting through only a minuscule amount of detail, and in the center, on the ground, was a narrow and dark path, fading into fog, contrasted by the otherwise gray, flat ground. The picture was taken a short distance above the ground, tilting slightly upward. From what little was visible of the sky, it was possible to make out dark gray clouds. The world looked depressing overall. It was just what I needed. Solitude. A place within a calm yet obscured forest to rest and think for a while. I didn't need nor want to see a beautiful sky. I needed peace of mind. A monotone world to fit my monotone thoughts. There was no group or public instance open. The world was completely empty. In fact, it showed a total player count of 0. I preloaded the world while looking through my Spotify, noticing that it was only 23 megabytes in size. It finished rather quickly. I put on my playlist, a mix of classical songs composed in a minor key, RHCP, and bittersweet sounding songs, and created an invite-only instance. Upon joining the world, I spawned on a dark, circular path, and a supple wind started playing. The trees opened up in front of me, making way for the path, which, after going forwards for a short distance, diverged into 2. One path going left and the other to the right. 3 crows cawed and flew from the left to the right. I spun around and found an old wooden table behind me. On it was a note and an unlit red candle. The note read, "A choice lies before you. To find what you seek, you must light the candle and make the right choice. Knock thrice, uncover the lies, but beware. Danger lies ahead." I stood there for a bit. Had I just unknowingly entered a puzzle or exploration world? Maybe the world hadn't been what I was looking for after all. I opened up the menu and checked the description of the world. It was empty. I exited out of the menu and read the note again. It didn't even rhyme, but I might as well play along. Sometimes worlds like this have hangout spots. If this one did, it might still be perfect for me, and once I felt better, I could keep my mind occupied for a bit. I looked over the note one more time, attempting to commit its contents to my memory. I noticed the word right was a different color, and the crows at the start had flown to the right. Maybe that was the author's way to hint that the path going to the right was the correct path. I turned around and started down the path. The path, although straight at first, became unpredictable, winding, and even narrower than the further it went. After walking for about 30 seconds, the path became narrow and faded to a point where it was impossible for me to tell whether or not I was even following it anymore. Instead of following the path itself, I tried to follow the gaps between the trees. It seemed to work for a while, but eventually I ended up at a dead end. I stopped. The wind was still howling, creating a noise not too different from a strong draft in the house. I turned around, feeling a black void spontaneously appear and grow within my chest. I did my best to head back the way I came. I walked for 30-odd seconds. Nothing. I kept walking. The atmosphere creeped into my mind, causing me to hesitate for a moment. My room was cold. I felt the void consuming me. I felt scared. I opened up the menu again and tried to go home. The game wouldn't fade out. I exited the menu and kept walking. I heard the ground moving. Footsteps. Had they always been that loud? Were the footsteps even mine? I opened up the menu and tried to go to my homeworld again. Nothing. The footsteps grew louder, but I was standing still. I exited the menu and kept walking. The footsteps grew louder. They were behind me now. I heard what sounded like a quiet sobbing. I freaked out, lifted my headset, and held the power button, turning it off. It made the shutdown noise, and I breathed a sigh of relief. I sat there for a moment before realizing I had just discovered a horror puzzle world. Great. Just what I needed. I equated the inability to go to my home world to me panicking and missing the button twice, and decided to listen to my playlist in my bed. Later that night, I hopped on again to hang out with a friend. Nothing seemed off at first. We world hopped for a bit and joined public lobbies, eventually settling on a private group instance in a hangout world taking place on a rooftop of a big white building. We relaxed, talked to people, told stories, and had an overall great time. That is, until I saw him. He stood out like a sore thumb. How could he not? A person using a monotone avatar depicting a tall man in a black trench coat with a glowing white face was standing in the distance, partially covered by a planter. The avatar had an open mouth, showing a rectangular black square, and its eyes were wide, always staring. Staring at me. I couldn't make out any more details. He was too far away. I conversed with my friend for a bit before eventually telling her that he had been staring at me. She looked around before fixing her gaze towards the planter and went quiet. "Let's move to a different spot," she mumbled. I didn't argue. It's not unusual for someone to stare at you randomly in VR chat, but something felt different about this person. It was as if they were somehow staring at me with intent. Despite moving to a different spot, it only took a few minutes for me to notice him again. This time he was standing on top of a staircase leading to a sky pool. I told my friend that he was there again, staring at me. She nodded and told me to switch to another instance. I didn't hesitate. We thankfully didn't spot him again for the rest of the night. It made it easier for me to shrug him off as a socially inept stranger. The next day, I got off work early and hopped on VR chat. None of my friends were online, so I decided to drive around solo in a car world depicting a lit up city at night. I put on one of my playlists, a mix of Eurobeat and techno, and started driving around, going as fast as I could without crashing. As I was about to take the second corner on the track with a drift, I heard a faint sob. At first, I thought nothing of it. I could have imagined it, or misheard the tires skidding on the track. But then I heard it again, as I straightened out. I had definitely heard it the first time. The world was playing a faint sob. I shifted up a gear and listened closely. Nothing. I finished the rest of the track and started the second lap. As I took the second corner again, I could have sworn I saw a bright white light glowing just beyond the track walls. I heard the sob again, except this time it didn't stop. I could hear it even as I went further down the track. It sounded as if someone was trying to silence the cries, causing them to inhale stutteringly and in short increments. I freaked out and went back to my homeworld before clearing my cache and exiting the game. At this point, I connected the dots. I couldn't believe it at first. I live in the real world. Ghosts aren't real. But I couldn't deny the fact that weird shit only started happening after I stumbled upon the horror world. After deliberating for a while, I eventually decided to go back to the world and see if it had any answers within it, but I was too freaked out to do it that day. I waited 2 days. During that time, none of my friends tried talking to me. I'll admit, it hurt a little bit, but I managed. When I finished building up the courage I'd need to go back into the world, I put on my headset again and booted up VR chat. I found the world in my recently visited tab and stared at it. It felt dumb, but was there any other explanation? A monotone world, a monotone man, and sobbing. Besides, what harm could any of it possibly do to me? It all took place in the game. A game I had been using to find people to hang out with. I chuckled softly and joined the world, creating an invite-only instance as I did. Upon spawning in, I was greeted by the same sight I'd remembered. The crows cawed and flew across the path once again, from left to right. The wind was howling. I turned around and, lo and behold, the table was there, note and all. I went up to it and reread it. Then I thought back to the first time I explored the world. Did I light the candle? The note had clearly told me to light the candle before moving. I facepalmed instinctively, accidentally hitting my headset with my controller as I did. I moved my hand towards the candle. I could interact with it. I clicked on it and the wick caught fire. I turned around and noticed something. This time, on a tree in the middle of the forking path, there was a wooden sign covered in white lettering. I walked up to it. It read as follows. Welcome, stranger. The answers you seek lie before you. Make the right choice. I moved my hand closer to it and noticed I could interact with it. Upon doing so, the text changed. It now read, a question will be asked at every step. Answer truthfully. I interacted with it again. Have you been visited? Move right if so, left if not. What kind of ARG bullshit question was that? Have I been visited? By whom? I pondered for a moment. I guess so. I followed the path, heading right. After walking for about 30 seconds, the path became narrow and faded. I kept walking. After what felt like minutes, the path picked up again. The world had changed. The path took me to another fork in the road. This time, there was a worn-out, rustic-looking house in the middle. I could see through gaps in between the planks that it was made of. The house only had one room. Inside of it was a warm light source, possibly another candle. I walked up to the door and paused. The note read, knock thrice. I couldn't interact with any part of the house except for the door, which allowed me to open it. I made a fist with my hand and moved it towards the door, knocking on it 3 times. There was no way to tell if it had registered my knocking, as my hand moved through the wall. I stood there for a moment. I had knocked thrice. I guess I could open it? My thoughts were interrupted by the door suddenly swinging open on its own, revealing a dull interior. Inside the house was a dark closet, an old bed, a table not too different from the one that spawned, and a half-broken chair. A rope tied into a noose was hanging in the middle of the room. On the table was a note. The path you're heading down does not have a happy ending. I froze, not because of the note, but because I thought I'd heard something. I listened intently. I definitely heard something. Footsteps. Subtle, quiet footsteps. Slow and determined. I looked back at the note and kept reading. To the left lies salvation. To the right you'll find answers. I thought back to the note at spawn. Uncover the lies. Was it referring to this note? The footsteps grew louder. The note in front of me said that salvation lies to the left. Was this some kind of wordplay? If so, I had uncovered the lies, but still had no idea which path was the correct one. The footsteps grew even louder and were accompanied by a noise, soft sobbing. I exited the house. Though I heard whatever was heading my way, I couldn't yet see it. I took a moment to decide which way to go. What was I actually seeking? Had it truly been answers, or to be free from whatever had followed me from this world? Would it still follow me? Would it still follow me if I picked answers over salvation? After another moment of deliberation, I decided to head down the path leading to the right. I needed answers, not some kind of divine ritual to save me from a ghost in the game. As I walked down the path, the footsteps and sobbing faded. After roughly 30 seconds of walking, the path became narrow and faded once again. I kept walking. The path faded even more and became crooked. Further ahead, I could see the path disappearing completely, leaving only a gap in the trees for me to follow. I started wondering whether I had chosen the correct path, but my thoughts were cut short. The footsteps were growing louder again. I turned around. In the distance, behind some trees, I saw him, walking toward me. The monotone man. He didn't have an animation. He slid whilst standing in a neutral pose, his arms hanging down his sides and his head. It was tracking me as he moved. I stood there for a moment, stunned. So it had really been a ghost. I turned back around and kept walking. After what felt like a few minutes, the trees opened up and gave way to a clearing, where light gray grass had begun sprouting up. In the middle of the clearing was a circular incline. A hole, or a pond, perhaps. I went up to it. It was a pond. No, the pond. It was the pond I had found my friend in. Before we died, we had been drinking at my place. The last time I saw him alive was when he walked out the door after saying goodbye. I stared blankly, my eyes glassy. I missed him. I had gone for a walk the very next day and found him there, in the clearing, face down in the pond. I could have stopped him, let him sleep over. If only I had... He wouldn't have died. The footsteps grew louder, then stopped. I could hear the sobbing behind me. I didn't react. I kept staring. In the low-quality reflection of the water, I could see the monotone man standing behind me, his hand on my shoulder. I'm sorry. As I lifted my headset, I could see a black rectangular object rising from the pond. I had found the answer. I sat up in my bed, resting my head against the backboard. I looked around for a moment before eventually fixing my gaze on the floor and laid my arms on the legs. The wounds that had once covered them were now a faded purple and somewhat gray, contrasting the bright red scars that had intersected and painted over the old ones. I couldn't even feel the pain. Why couldn't I feel the pain? My headset rested exactly where I had put it 7 days prior, on top of my drawer across the room. No one had even tried to talk to me. No one. I looked over at my sketchbook on my desk, the monotone man's anguished expression staring back at me. I had drawn him standing in a VR chat world I often went to as a way to express myself. It was beautiful. So beautiful. The serenity of the scene helped me cope. I was all alone. I had truly grasped this fact while I was sitting in the forest clearing one day. The world had been deleted 5 days ago, and I couldn't find a reason to use VR chat again. I had no way to cope. This couldn't go on any longer. My friendships were shallow at best. I placed my face in my hands, rubbing it, before standing up and sighing. I have to take control. I made coffee and sat down at my desk, methodically placing the knife I had taken to me to the left of the sketchbook. After staring at it for a moment, I picked up my pen and flipped to another page in my sketchbook. I pressed my pen down on the page, but I can't let my potential go to waste. I began writing. I started playing VR chat about 2 months ago. That was The Forest Clearing by Sidewinder, Creepypasta.com. I know that they were creepy, there was some darker content, but I hope you guys were able to continue to stay comfy and nice and cozy. And I appreciate you all being here. You are all thebomb.com. And yeah, thank you so much. I will see you guys another day. Good night.